Here with Daniel Beckman. Daniel Beckman is my special guest for this evening's broadcast. Daniel is a Peabody Emmy award-winning journalist who's here to help break down what you've seen pretty much all of today during this election. So the biggest thing I want to talk to you about, Daniel, has to deal with President Trump's when he came out just a few hours ago, had the press conference and said some really shocking and somewhat disturbing news, and just statements in general. Would you want to take a second and talk about that?
Yeah, how many times have people introduced something like that in the last 4 years? But I wanted to make a point about this. I can hardly watch CNN anymore with how much they've convicted him. I think that they've missed the story on Trump because of how they're constantly trying to talk about how bad he is. Everybody's hated on Trump for the last 4 years. This is different. You keep thinking in your mind at some point, maybe there's some sort of a end to this, or there's some sort of a joke, or maybe he doesn't mean what he says. But today is really significant. I think you might want to mark it on your calendars, everybody, because, and I know it's so hard because everything's been so hyperbolic the last 4 years, unprecedented, all of that. What's significant about today is that he said all of the votes that are for him are legal, and that if Biden wins, he's only going to win with the legal votes. And you can kind of read between the lines that he thinks that the mail-in votes are illegal. But let's just consider for a moment our armed services overseas. They're the people who have been mailing in their votes for the longest time. You have to think that people like that, who are risking their lives in whatever that they've been doing, deserve a right to have their votes counted, and that those should not be considered illegal. And so, obviously, some of the people that have been voting by mail are not military service people. There's been an abundance of people mailing in votes because of the pandemic. To set the stage like that, and you just have to take it seriously. You have his son in Georgia right now, where there is, a 12,000 vote margin, depending upon what you're looking at, maybe less than that right now, that's stirring people up and making up things about things that didn't happen or aren't true, or with fictitious people to try to get people excited there. And you have to wonder at this point in this country, if this blows into something we had last night outside the vote counting facility in Arizona, an angry mob. There isn't a voice of reason that's above Biden and Trump right now that can calm this. And so I am not somebody that wants to encourage anybody to be concerned or scared or anything. I definitely discourage people from going to anything that's violent. I think shows of force where you're present and you're peaceful say a lot. But you can't listen to and I know a lot of people don't listen to what Trump says anymore. And I don't invite you to, watch that speech if you heard it. But chances are Biden is going to win soon. We're going to talk about some numbers in some various states. And what happens when those states are certified and you have half of the country, roughly, that voted, not half the country entirely, that's angry and encouraged by their leader to do things. And you've heard there have been a few Republicans that have said things, but they don't carry the favor or the weight that Donald Trump does. And what it really signals is he's not planning to give this up.
I just want to jump in really quickly and address this question to the audience. So all of you watching here at home, what do you think about President Trump's address to the country today? How did that make you feel with his statements about the political system that we currently have with the election system? How, to a lot of us, it felt like he attacked the current democratic system itself. What do you think at home? One thing specifically I just want to bring up, I see that we had a comment here from Space Force Captain from Twitter, says, wow, I didn't hear him say absentee votes were illegal. Well, when in his announcement or in his speech, he said that any vote that was received after election day should be illegal. And that itself is any vote that's coming in absentee, these votes that are coming in from military, from overseas. He is saying that. That's exactly what he's saying.
That's not the law. I mean, in certain places, it is the law. It needs to be there by election day. In Georgia, that's not the case. And I think that if you listen to the whole speech, because you got to look at how Trump talks, he gives something to everybody there. He tells the Proud Boys to stand by and stand down. You get everything. He says everything. In that speech, you also heard him, which he has repeated, which is also part of his style, that mail-in votes are fraudulent. Mail-in votes are fraudulent. Mail-in vote, there's fraud. People are getting the wrong things that don't even exist. It's not true in any sort of wide-scale way. And the other thing is the Republicans could do the same thing. It's when the turnout is this big, and you have people voting in all sorts of different ways. This was obviously they're going to try to tear it apart right now, but this was a fair election. You did not have people doing things on election day. You can watch on C-SPAN what's going on in Philadelphia in the convention center right now. There's a camera on it. Now, obviously, someone off camera could be making this stuff up, but it's not happening. And so we can't control what gets into the minds of people. And if this does end up becoming something that's violent, that's when it starts to become a tit for tat and an issue where you can't really remember why you started doing it this way. And it's troublesome. And I know people probably want to go to sleep tonight and all of that. There's a chance Georgia could, they're not going to get called tonight, but there's a chance that Biden could take the lead. Philadelphia is still counting votes in Pennsylvania. Biden is going to win in Pennsylvania. I mean, you might call me later and say I'm not credible about it, but Biden's probably going to win by a comfortable margin there. And it will be a state like Michigan and Wisconsin where they will certify that ballot, say it's official. So
Daniel,
then what?
I want to bring some comments to your attention. Maybe you'd know how to best answer these. So from Bayron16 from Reddit, he posts, how do the Republicans move forward and take the House? What strategy should we employ? And please be specific. What do you think?
Take the House of Representatives in 2 years? Or, I mean, I guess you asked that question, but if I were advising Republicans on how to take that House, I want to go back to something that, this struck me as weird. I say I'm from Livingston, Montana. I spend most of my time there. That's a town of 7,000 people in Montana, split town, have neighbors that are Trumpers, get along with them completely fine. And I was there around October 10th when Nancy Pelosi, when Trump was sick with COVID, wanted to pass a bill through the House that gave her and a board the ability to question whether or not a president's mentally fit for office. Now, this is a woman who already impeached the president earlier this year, if anybody remembers that. This bill is never going to pass. And honestly, if it did, it could also be used against Democratic presidents for political reasons when they question whether or not Biden, who has a stutter, is mentally capable of having his office. This is why they lost seats. They lost 5 seats. One of them is in South Carolina. I know that guy well, Joe Cunningham. It's very hard in some of these close races to deal with that on October 10th when people are voting early in these places. That, for me, is one reason why the Democrats lost seats. And so if you're a Republican, how do you pick it up? There's not a lot of things that you can do when you're in the minority there. You can kind of point things out. If you're in the majority, you have a lot of the power. And so I would say that the Democrats have to do a better job about what they're doing. And then if you're a Republican, you got to find good candidates that speak to that moment, whatever that moment might be. It might actually be people wanting Trump back. It could be whatever in these local places. But I looked at maps today throughout the country, and we are so polarized now. I know that people have been saying this for years, and this is why you don't want to cry wolf. But how many swing districts are left? There really aren't that many left, and we're about to go to gerrymander again because it's 2020. So there's going to be even less of these left, and so there's not going to be a lot of places where we may be flipping back some of these districts back and forth for a while. There's just not a lot of them left.
Before we move on to actually talking more about the country and what's going on with it, I actually wanted to bring up, one last thing with the speech, which was the demeanor. That was something that just really stood out to me when I saw President Trump talk just earlier today. He seemed so down, calm. Like it was like seeing a completely different person than from what from what he demonstrated at 2 a.m. Wednesday. Wednesday, he just was very, verbose out there. It seemed like he knew he had it in the bag, but then when, earlier today, it felt like I was watching the loser. And then you look at Joe Biden come out on stage and you see him talk, and he tells everyone to hold on, sit tight. And he sounded like he was giving his winning speech. That was how I saw it, and this is how I've seen other commentators watching the speeches have also represented. What about you? What do you think about that, Daniel?
Well, here's something that we know. I can't speak to whether or not he had a stomach ache or whether or not he's bipolar. Right. I don't know. But one thing I can say is he often has a bigger bark than his bite, okay? I don't think that he's going to hold himself up there with a gun in the White House and wait for the cavalry to drag him out of there. What I think he did today and what he's continued to do, and this is damage we're going to be dealing with because it's in people's minds for a really long time, especially if you look at who voted for who right now. The problem is that other people will be causing those problems, and that's what he wants to have happen here. And how do you call those people off? Who are they going to respect and trust when the entire Republican platform was a demagogue? They did not have issues that they put on there. They didn't have them. It's Trump. And so there aren't other people that can... Mitt Romney, nobody's going to care what he's... you can love or hate Mitt Romney or any of these Republicans that are honest, decent people that have good values and all sorts of things, believe in America. They don't have the power. If George W. Bush came out and said that, hey, everybody, let this play out, it's not who they care about. And so, I don't think that Donald Trump personally is going to do anything. Maybe he'll walk out of there after it's done, and maybe by the end of the week something will happen, or maybe all the court cases will work its way out, and then we'll be past this. The problem is we all have to live here afterwards, and it's really hard to put some of these genies back in the bottle when these people, they're going to think that they were robbed. He said that this election is being stolen. And moving to what the strategy is on the Democratic side and some of the calls that I've been on all day and what we're doing. And this is some advice for people out there who support Biden, assuming a lot of people here do. Own the victory. That doesn't mean go there with a baseball bat. That means right now, don't think that we're not winning. We are winning right now. If they stop the votes from being counted right now, we would win. So we don't want that. We want to see what's going on. And I think that you got to own that. You got to tell your friends that we won. Because what happened in 2000, there was a little bit, I know it's not about what's in the media, but we all need the confidence to own this victory. It really does matter later on some moments and people. We won this race. And I know that some people are like, we got to wait till it's certified. That's great. I appreciate that. That's honest. We all want that to happen. But Joe Biden won. And it's just a matter of time until we've let the process play itself out, which is working fine, with the exception of these intimidating things that are going on.
Yeah.
When we get to the other side of this, you just got to own this win. That's what everybody's talking about.
Daniel, I think you really reflected what Joe Biden said earlier today in his speech, just very, very clearly, that Americans, both on the left and on the right, no matter what side you are on, you are an American, and that at the end of the election, that's what we are, and we can't go through the rest of our lives being separated. We have to try and be bipartisan. We have to try and reach across the aisle. And we're each other's neighbors. We're each other's friends. And, some of us, we're each other's family. And it's just, we are American. And that's just what people have to remember at the end of the day.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Sometimes I get a little excited, but I like Shub Leib and if I said his name right or her name right, I like your question. How do we change some minds of Trump supporters? What the question is there? And I have a really good answer to this. That's why I was so excited. So I live in a split community where there's a Trump parade that goes down my street. And in a lot of cases, the Biden people were more quiet, but the poll results show that Livingston, Montana is half and half. You know how you do this? You let people listen, which I didn't just do here to Marco, who's I think a friend of mine at this point. He's a great reporter.
Thank you.
You let people listen, and you let them say everything that they want to say before you say anything. You listen for the points where you have something in common, and you start talking about that so that you have some common ground there. And then you build from there. And then when you have common ground, it's really not about the differences, it's about what you can do together. And I know that this sounds cheesy, and it doesn't get the best ratings, but I have Republican friends that I love and I've been able to do work with, really serious work. Anybody who's done anything in politics that's worth anything, no offense to the squad or anybody else, but if you want your law to stay after you leave, if you don't want them to erase your executive order after you're done, you got to get some people over there to agree with you. And the way to do that is to find out what you have in common. And then over time, you might be able to convince them of some other things, but you're gaining credibility and trust there. If you just start coming in, barging in with what you want, they're trained in their minds, as we would be too, if you're being attacked, to not listen to it. Because can they convince you to like Trump? It's not going to happen.
You know, that was just a great answer. Thanks again, Daniel. And like what you said, we're friends. You've been so great on the show, and you know, I want to take a second and turn our attention to the actual election, specifically looking at Arizona and what's going on in Georgia. This is the two hotspots I think everyone is looking at. You know, their eyes are all on both of these states. It's coming so close. I think specifically in Arizona, with Trump consistently creeping up onto Biden's numbers, everyone's just wondering, will he catch up and will he get ahead of Biden by the time the last 10% of Arizona comes in? What do you think about that, Daniel?
Well, you know, there's a little bit of something going on in the background here with Arizona. So Fox and the Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, conservative places, obviously, called that state on election night for Biden, and then the Associated Press did. So that's why everybody's been really feeling like we just get Nevada and it's over. But the issue we're having right now is we don't really know. It's a little bit more confusing with mail-in ballots because they've had mail-in for a lot longer in Arizona, and a lot of retired Republicans go there because of the taxes. So what people are going back and forth on is, are these dropped off ballots, which could be more Democratic, or are they more of these mail-in ballots, which generally skew Republican? And the theory is that there's a trove of Democratic ballots left that were the drop-offs that come after in the pile, the mail-in ones that arrived later. Now, I don't know. I don't know. I think that the Associated Press, which is not some fakakta place like Fox News or in some cases the Wall Street Journal, I think Wall Street Journal is a credible place most of the time. But the Associated Press is really the gold standard of objectivity. They have made some mistakes, but to do so in such a high-profile way, it seems really unlike something they would do. So that's one of the main reasons that people have confidence that Arizona is going to stay for Biden, and that maybe this logic about these ballots that are left over will go in his direction. But we can't help but think, and I don't think this affects the result. But yesterday they were holed up in the place they count the votes in Phoenix, Maricopa County, with an angry mob outside that was armed. Does that sound like America? I don't even know what country that sounds like. You're a poll worker in there with a face mask on working during a pandemic. You get these things in, you got to check the signatures, got to make sure that they're real, and you do it one by one. You open up an envelope and then you put it in a pile to put in a machine. People are watching you. You can't put it in your pocket. You can't light it on fire. But you literally could hear a mob outside chanting, "Stop the vote," or whatever they were confused in what they were doing. That isn't America. That's why people left countries like that. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but you're counting votes under those conditions. I can't say whether or not that's why it's taking them longer, but that would be a valid excuse. Well, the theory in Georgia right now is even in the red counties. This is also what's playing out in Pennsylvania. These are mail-in ballots, and so some of them are going to be like provisional ballots. Some of them are going to be things that are from the military. But for the most part, these are people that are COVID people that stay at home. That might have been the logic is that they're heavily Democratic, and that's why Biden has caught up in the end here. Same thing as what's going on in Pennsylvania. There's a few things going on in Georgia. It does look very promising, and that's really exciting because if you think about it, a lot of people are talking about this in Atlanta and in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Philadelphia, African American voters there in those cities may have saved the country if this ends up working out. Now, obviously, I'm being incredibly biased, but we are working with the Biden campaign, so I am. But I believe that. And the other thing about Georgia right now, even if somehow we don't pull this out, you have a generation of African Americans that are feeling their power and gaining their confidence there. And these are good people. I'm excited to be part of their generation and seeing this all happen in front of us, home of Dr. Martin Luther King, with what happened with John Lewis passing away earlier this year. Those people, this community is where the win will be happening tonight. And it's going to be close, and there's probably going to be a recount, and there's probably going to be some angry people and funny business. I know people in Atlanta are bracing for this evening. They're worried about violence. What happened after George Floyd, a lot of those people came into Atlanta. But Atlanta is a place that has been progressive and really interesting for a really long time, and tonight they might get credit for it. So that's really exciting, and that's something that I think a lot of people can be proud of. And it's the story here because, people of color and women are Biden's coalition. That's what it's going to be. And then there are white people that voted, and Trump did better with white women than I think people want to give it credit. And so we can analyze that as we go along. But if you look in Georgia, then you compare it to places like Missouri and Ohio that used to be swing states, and how they weren't even close. The country is changing, and what it seems like is they're enfranchising black people for the first time. There's not a huge influx of liberals moving into Georgia. There are people who are there who are finally we're getting to the polls to vote. So that's exciting. Yeah, I've just been obsessed with watching Pennsylvania because I love the state. There's not many states I don't love, but Biden cares so much about it because it's his story. He's from Scranton. I know Delaware is what made him famous, but he's winning Scranton, the county that Scranton is in right now. He's going to win that county, and he's going to win the state. And what's really interesting about Pennsylvania is he probably made some mistakes with his mentioning of fracking where he pissed everybody off. People don't like fracking. He pissed them off, and then he also pissed off people when he said he's going to get rid of oil. If he ends up winning the state despite that huge mistake, I guess, because if you're going to go into fracking, you got to kind of own it and he messed that whole thing up. He's gonna. I know that we're all supposed to wait here, but I think even this evening we might see him take the lead in that state, and he's going to win. And that's really meaningful to him, and I think it's also meaningful to the country. If he ends up going over the top on that state, I think it'll make him really happy. And it's the Keystone State; it kept the country together, so that'll be meaningful. Oh gosh. I want to give you all some stuff. You may not appreciate this, but I have a little bit of depth on this. So you go back to 2000 and look who was running George W. Bush's effort on this. It was somebody named James Baker, who Democrats respected. You had the institution of the Republican Party that was making really strong cases and really fighting that battle, and the Democrats that weren't quite frankly ready for what was going on there. This year, we have Rudy Giuliani. And I'm sorry, I mean, I guess he was America's mayor at one point. I even saw him on the anniversary of September 11th. I saw a fraction of the human that he might have been around that time. That guy, we all know the Borat video, right? That's going around. Go check out Amazon if you want to see what's going on with that. He has that guy running his circus, and they're throwing anything at these places that they can right now. And, look, they may find something. They may at some point find something. But they have to make credible cases in a court of law. They do. And in a lot of these jurisdictions, which I think Trump is probably going to point out, these are areas where there are judges that are Democrats. They can keep appealing, but the upper courts need to accept an appeal at some level. And I really hate that I just said that they are Democrats, because I honestly think that, now I could be wrong, you get up to the Supreme Court with the kind of crap that they did in Michigan. Mm-hmm. The case in Michigan that I saw basically said, stop counting the votes. And the judge was like, we've already finished. It's over. So, it's kind of, and on what grounds are we stopping the count of what law was broken? So there is one case in Pennsylvania where they're letting the poll watchers come in a larger number. That's something that Trump did win today. And I think the reason they were keeping them away was that they're worried about intimidation. But that isn't throwing out any votes. There is no case in this country right now that I know of, and I've been watching this up, maybe someone will find one, where votes are being thrown out or a process is being stopped when they're counting. There will be recounts, and those aren't things people should be scared of. Most of the time in a recount, there really isn't much of a change. When things start to get into trouble is if there's a state where it's critical, like Georgia, if they become critical, and you're going into these provisional ballots, and ballots where they're going to hear a lot of people saying cured. So in California 4 years ago, I had my roommate sign my ballot, let everybody know that I was out of town, and he filled it out and sent it in. It was my intention. San Francisco County sent it back to my house, and they said, you need to sign this again or else we're throwing it out. I was out of town. I didn't get to vote in 2016. So that's what we're talking about here. That's what curing a vote is. There is nothing illegal about that. Trump will make that into the biggest thing you've ever heard of. But those kinds of things will be the next act and the next chapter of this. And that doesn't happen until the states attempt to certify, and then there's a recount. But if they certify and there's a recount, these got to be good cases. I don't think people need to worry about that. I also don't think we need to worry about eventually when Biden wins, Trump leaves. The thing I worry about, and we all got to work on this together, is some of the things we talked about here tonight. we're stuck with this mental energy that
Mm.
the Democrats stole the election and that sort of thing. And that is going to take a lot of work. It's going to be hard. And then also keep in mind, we have split government. Mitch McConnell has to decide who the cabinet officials are on some level because they have to approve and consent. So I can go deep into this stuff if you want.
No. I mean, I think that's great for a digest. I wanted to throw in a note here too that I had, and that was on ABC World News. They interviewed the general attorney of Nevada and pressed him on whether or not any tampering with ballots or any illegal tampering with the election occurred, and he said no, there wasn't a single instance of tampering with the ballots except for one. And ironically, this one instance was where it was a Trump voter actually tried to vote twice. And that was the only instance that they could find. But he did say that if they did find anything, they would prosecute it to the highest extent of the law. So everyone is taking this seriously. And even, the Attorney General of Nevada has also said that as well. One thing I just kind of wanted to bring up to the main screen here. Specifically, I think going on the election trail, actually, let's do this. Going on the election trail, seeing what we have left, there's 6 states. We can assume that Alaska, just by historically, always goes with red. Right now, if Biden was going to win, he would need Pennsylvania. Other than that, we could see that he could get Arizona, Nevada, pretty much any combination of 2, he would be able to win. Well, with President Trump, he would need all 3: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Alaska, and either Nevada or Arizona. The closest one it looks like he's winning would be Nevada, which is a complete toss-up as of right now because it's just so close. Arizona, he's creeping up on very steadily, which you could say that he might get. You might say he may not. We just don't know. It all depends on the last county with the mail-in ballots that are still being tracked, which we will find out tomorrow. But other than that, Daniel, did you have anything else you wanted to end with tonight?
I think that, I appreciate that you're an honest journalist. I used to be one. Biden won this election, and it's just a matter of letting the process play out. And so if you support Biden, own the win as much as you can. Don't be overconfident about it or anything like that because, it's 2020. I mean, shit. Got to be careful with everything these days. But if people start questioning it, if people are like, I don't feel like this is going on, you should tell them that he won the race and that democracy happened here in a process. And honestly, if we didn't have more votes, then I think he would concede, and I would concede. The other thing I just want to say in passing is I take calls and emails from people all day that are worried and freaking out about this, despite the fact that there are some people that are probably turned on. Most people in this country right now are tired. I think it's fair to say that. And they have something to lose. We all have something to lose in this country, I hope. And so I think that don't worry about this. If you don't want to pay attention to things like this because it gets you nervous, then don't do it. It's okay. You'll hear about what happens. You can turn this stuff off and we'll take care of it. If you like being like me where you're just a junkie and you can't help but watch every little part of this and talk to everybody about it, just keep in mind it's stressful. It is doing something to you that things aren't certain, and this stuff has been hanging out there for 2 days. So take care of yourself, drink plenty of water, make sure you sleep, make sure you exercise, and try to be nice to people, especially people who you disagree with. That matters. So that's my closing Jerry Springer.
Well, just like what Daniel was saying, everyone, I think that no matter what happens tomorrow, we'll be seeing the results most likely from Arizona and Georgia come in, possibly even Pennsylvania will finish up as well. But I think no matter at the end of the day, we're all Americans. And I think crossing the aisle and remembering that we're all neighbors, we're all people, and uniting the country is the biggest thing that we have to do moving forward from here. Sit tight. It's gonna be a long ride. Recounts are gonna happen, and this isn't gonna go away for a bit, unfortunately. But as long as we get through it unified, I think is the hopeful term. I think that's what we should be going with. But anyways, this was a broadcast from HAPS, the network of Now, and this was your late night election digestion with myself, Marco Torres, and my special guest, Daniel Beckman, a Peabody and Emmy Award-winning journalist. And we'd like to say thank you for watching and good night.
Good night.